Good evening, and welcome to the July 9th, 2018 Cross Lake City Council meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As always, we have some additions to the agenda this evening, and so I'd like a motion from the council to accept those. Brad Nelson first. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Gary Heacock second. All those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Thank you. And then on to our consent calendar, which holds a ton of information for those of you who are interested in looking it all up. All items here listed are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be acted on by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a citizen or council member so requests. Is there a motion on the floor to accept the consent calendar?
I'll make that motion.
Dave Schrupp first.
I'll second it.
Gary Heacock second. All those in favor of accepting the consent calendar as submitted, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. For the mayor's report tonight, first of all, we want to wish Chris Monroe, one of our favorite citizens in Cross Lake, the best. And moving on, we also want to remember Paul Hogue and his family. Paul passed away on July 6th, 2018, and we remember him as the manager of Cross Lake Communications. So please keep these, Paul and his family, and Chris and Bill, and we'll move on from there. Thank you. The other thing under Mayor's report tonight is a letter from Crow Wing County, and perhaps some of you are familiar with the effort to put the Pine River watershed, the Crow Wing Soil and Water Conservation District, in all under one umbrella. So they're calling it One Watershed, One Plan. And Crow Wing County invites all of the township and cities within the Pine River watershed to attend a meeting to discuss what a One Watershed, One Plan is and answer your questions regarding this proposed plan. The date of this is July 24th at the Cass County Land Department Backus office in Backus from 1 o'clock to 3 p.m. The things on the agenda is, what is a One Watershed, One Plan? What is the process and timeline for developing the plan? What issues are township cities facing regarding habitat, surface water, and groundwater? Are there particular drainage/culvert issues as it relates to water quality that should be considered? And finally, opportunities for cities, townships to participate in the plan's development. This is important to Cross Lake as we are reminded once again that water quality is a top priority for us. And then secondly, under the mayor's report, effective May 31st, Jim Talbot, who was a member of the Park and Rec Library, put in his resignation, and we had an alternate. We actually had two alternates, and Gary Nordstrom was the first one to come in with his application, so he will be appointed to his first three-year term ending in January 31st, 2021. So Gary has a long history with the Park and Rec and was very instrumental in getting our community garden up and running. So he will be a great member for the commission. Moving on to public forum, no action will be taken on any of the issues. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Gary. We do need,
I'll make that motion.
thank you, to approve Gary Nordstrom to the Park and Rec Department.
I'll
Is
second that.
David Schrupp, second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to move on to public forum. No action will be taken on any of the issues raised. If appropriate, the issues will be placed on the agenda of a future council meeting. Speaker must state their name and address. Each speaker is given a 3-minute time limit. So is anybody from the audience that would like to get up in public forum today?
Good evening, Cindy Mugato with the Cross Lake Chamber of Commerce. And I just want to start out by saying thank you for your contribution to the 48th annual fireworks event that took place last weekend. One of the best shows Cross Lake has ever seen. That is not only my opinion, but the opinion of many, many, many people that have stopped into the chamber or called the chamber to pass on those sentiments. So I thank you very much. I also want to thank Mike Canan. He is a summer resident up here, and he owns the Lookout Bar and Grill in Maple Grove. He is the one that directed us to the new pyrotechnic company, RES, that put on our show this year. Did a great job. He also suggested that we choreograph it to music, so we got in touch with Hubbard Broadcasting at B93 Radio. They did a great job. A few other thank yous I want to mention. One is to CNC Boatworks. Brad specifically, and his son Max. Max was out there in super high winds all day Saturday, hauling those barges out there. It was no small feat. And then he towed them back in at midnight, so a big shout out to Max Nelson for that help. Also to Joel Knipple and Dick Elmquist, who are here tonight, and Tom Schreiber, who are the technical guys that get those barges put together. Kent Peterson is the proprietor of the Sand Island property that we anchor off of, so that's a nice safety feature. And then there's some major donors this year. Not only the city of Cross Lake contributed, but CNC Boatworks, Reed's Market, Cross Lake Communications, and then again the Lookout Bar and Grill each donated $1,000. We had many other donors, 15 to be exact, that donated $100 toward the cause. And then we had the donations cans all around town, and that we saw about $700 out of those cans. So we are making an effort to pack away a little money for next year's show. We want to hire the same pyrotechnic, do the same deal. We thought it was great, and I just wanted to specifically thank you again for your contribution.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'd like to also give a shout out to Cindy alias Spotlight Mugato, who lit up the shoreline so nicely for us on the way down the lake so we could find our way back. You might have, maybe a couple eyes, a few places along the way, got a little spotlight shining going on there, but you did a great job. So that was fun to watch from a distance.
Thank you, Brad. Any other comments? Okay, we will move on to the city administrator's report. Mike Linus.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to give the council an update on the issuance of bonds for the Manhattan Road project. Remember back in 2016, we passed a capital improvement plan. At that time, we had estimated we would need roughly $800,000 for the projects on the docket back in 2016 to issue bonds for. Right now, my latest estimate, working with Dave Rees, we're at about $750,000 of bondable costs for that project, and then we will have some bonding costs with that. So what I'd like to do is get a more formal number for you to act on, possibly as early as our next council meeting, with some more information from David Drown to issue those bonds and proposed bond rates and payment schedules and such. It's going to be roughly $800,000. So I'm assuming that's still the council's intent to do that. If it is so, we'll go ahead and get the paperwork ready for that, try to get it ready for your next meeting so we can reimburse ourselves for the project, okay? Second item we have is a memo from the city clerk to set dates for the budget and levy meetings. And if you look at item E2 in your packet, I like to start with the end in sight. So our December council meeting is on Monday, December 10th. Prior to the council meeting, I'd like to have our special council meeting to provide a forum for the public input meeting prior to the levy certification. And then we can finalize the 2019 budget along with the related levy at that December 10th meeting. If you look at item D, would be the next important date on that. That's the regular council meeting where in September, where we would need to certify our preliminary levy. And remember, that's the opportunity where we certify the maximum amount our levy would be. We can always come down, but we can't raise it higher than that September meeting. The starting point for this would be item F, and that would be our preliminary meeting on Monday, August 6th at 6 p.m. to discuss the first pass at the levy. Now, you noticed I skipped 2 dates. One was August 20th, and the other one was October 22nd. Now, those are optional. We'll probably use one of those meetings. We may not need both of them. Or if we feel we have other discussion, we can always add additional meetings between those dates. So that is what we're proposing for our preliminary budget schedule for discussions with the council, okay? Could we get a motion on that to set those as the dates?
Can we have a motion on the floor to,
motion to approve that.
Dave Nevin
I'll
first?
second it.
Dave Schrupp second. All those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carried. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next item for discussion is, there's a whole bunch of personnel issues, and it was one of the additions for tonight's meeting. The reason it was an addition, because we just held our second meeting, just personnel meeting prior to this council meeting. So if I get you to turn to that memo, the first item we're requesting action on, back on June 18th, we had a personnel committee met, and they approved motions to recommend the following. The first item is approval to remove from probationary status Sergeant Eric Swanson effective July 1st, 2018.
Is there a motion from the floor to,
Make that motion.
okay, Dave Nevin first,
I'll second it.
Gary Heacock second. All those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Item 2, you know, it's really nice when you have an employee that steps up and you can reward them for keeping things going in someone's absence. And what I'm talking about is everyone remembers, you know, the park director resigned back in the end of May of this year. And in the interim, Jane Munson has stepped up to the plate and taken on the additional responsibilities to directing the operations of the Parks and Rec and keeping things going and trying to get volunteers organized and basically filling in as the interim type park director in that time. And so what the Personnel Committee is recommending is to adjust her current wage from $17.65 to $22.65, retroactive to June 1st, for her work in directing the operation of the parks, recs, and library due to the resignation of the park director. This will be effective retroactive to the day when she started doing that, which is June 1st, and it would revert back to her current wage once the new park director is on board. So we just wanted to reward Jane for stepping up and doing a great job under less than ideal conditions.
Is there a motion on the floor?
I'll make that
Okay,
motion.
Gary Heacock's first, second.
I'll second that.
Brad Nelson second. All those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Okay, thank you. The second half of this memo talks about the recommendations that came out of our Personnel Committee meeting just a few minutes ago. And we have more good news to report. Ted Strand is requesting approval to remove from probationary status Seth Wanabo in the Public Works Department. Seth is currently at step 7, and with moving him off probation, we'd move him to the next step to step 8 with an effective date of July 22nd. I think everyone's seen Seth working around the city, and he seems to be doing a great job. Right, Ted?
Is there a motion on the floor?
I'll make that motion.
Gary Hecox first,
I'll second that.
Dave Schrupp second. All those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Ted, did you have any comments? Okay.
Okay, thank you. The second item on here is to, I got a request from City Clerk Shar Nelson to do a job review. Over the past year or so, Shar's duties have changed. She's taken on more duties in City Hall. And we had a lot of discussion on this at the Personnel Committee level, and what we're recommending is to revise Shar's job title and her job description, along with the salary adjustment to reflect the changes in her current duties. And the item we just passed out, you can see in red, we're suggesting we change her job description from city clerk to administrative assistant / city clerk. The one thing we found that for me was difficult in this was it was hard to find a city clerk that just did a city clerk, taking care of licenses, basically. In Shar's position, takes care of the utility billing, the cemetery, accounts payable, and just a whole host of other things. Implemented the online training program and the things that we've outlined they're listed in red in the proposed job description. The other thing we did was we looked at some statewide data, which is actually managed by Springstead, we'll talk about in a minute, and through the League of Minnesota Cities, where cities put in the salaries that they pay their staff. And so with the changes to the job description and trying to stay competitive and comparable with other cities, we're suggesting we be right around that average. And the average from the data we looked at as a committee suggests that we should be paying Shar roughly $70,000 from her current salary. Her annual salary would be adjusted to $70,000. What's interesting is you might ask, well, where did we budget for this? We did not budget for this item specifically. We budgeted a little more for it, but our adjustments didn't come to where we budgeted. The other thing we did is we had about $7,500 in our budget for consulting administrative services for the year, which we're not expecting to use at all. So if we could get council action and a motion,
I'll make that motion.
is that?
Well,
For-
I'll second that, and I'd like to comment on it if I could. But
You go right ahead.
well, before you came, Mike, the previous office was 3 people, correct? Right? Yep. So you guys are really doing 3 people's work, right? So, I think Shar definitely deserves it.
One of the comments that I wrote down was highly organized. And so, are there any other comments from the council before we vote? Okay, so we've had a first and we've had a second. All those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Okay, thank you. This is not listed on your agenda, but we wrote it in right after our meeting as item 2A based on the discussions of the meeting. You remember a couple years ago, we had Springstead come in and do a study where they took all the employees, union or not, and squished them together and said, here's a whole table of where we think you possibly be within your market. There was a lot of discussion on that, but we never accepted or rejected the report. And the issue we had with it from a staff perspective is it really didn't describe what people were doing or what they were being held accountable for by the council or supervisors. So what the committee was suggesting at this time is to not accept the report, so we can just say, okay, it's done, we got some good information out of that, but it really didn't fit what we were trying to do. The good news is looking at the ranges of our staff, we're somewhere within that range. The only debate was were we starting at the right place? Or were we appropriately compensating people for what we were asking them to do? And so, because of that, our recommendation is that we formally reject the report. That was done about 1.5 years ago now. Is that right, Dave?
That's right. And then what we've suggested, and Mike's agreed to that, is that by November 1st,
Sure, yep.
Mike's going to go through, and he's using a lot of data from the League of Minnesota Cities, and he's creating ranges for the employees that we have, so that we have a range for everybody, and that will be our program moving forward. I'm sure there's going to have to be some wording on how it's utilized and operated, but the information from Sprigstad was too generic, and it was just terrible, I think.
Didn't fit our community
No.
and employees.
And one thing we were looking at too is, that kind of started some of this, is we looked at the league's own posting for similar jobs that were out there. And so we're using real live data for real jobs that are in other communities that we felt were comparable. So that's part of our process, to refine that, to make sure it fits into what makes sense for us. So
And the Personnel Committee is going to do that?
I'll come to the Personnel Committee with the
Right.
information for them to discuss. So we can formally establish those ranges, so that when we hire people in the future, we have a starting point, and we don't have to say, well, I think so-and-so should be this, and so-and-so should be that, where we have some more formal policy around that.
And Char was the first one, so she's kind of checked off the list, and I believe the park position that's open, that's
That'll
the
be the
next
second
one that's
one.
coming.
Yep.
So we're going to, one by one, get them cleaned up.
I invite any of you to come in and take a look at what we're doing, so we understand that too, if you're interested. Okay?
Okay. And do you want a motion on that, or just?
Yes.
Okay, so what we need is a motion on the floor to formally reject the Springstead study that we'd initially began.
And develop our own ranges.
And develop our own range
11-1.
of salary adjustments
Right.
commensurate with the responsibilities and duties.
I'll make that motion.
Dave
I'll
Schrupp
second it.
first, Gary Heacock second. All those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Okay, the third item and last item on my personnel recommendations from the committee is for the council's approval to accept the resignation of the library coordinator pursuant to the provision of the AFSCME union contract effective immediately.
Is
I'll
there-
make that motion.
Brad Nelson first. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Gary Heacock second. Is there any questions or comments?
What do we do to replace her then?
That's to be determined. We've got a little bit of time, and there's a process with this type of situation within the union contract to handle this exact situation.
What's the interim plan?
In the interim, some of the suggestions that have come up are saying, let's identify a person to fill in until we determine what the longer-term need is.
There's a need for
Yeah.
that.
Yep, and there is, and we're recognizing that. But we have to follow the process and make sure we're following the terms of the union contract.
Thank you, Dave. Any other questions or
Good questions.
comments? All those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, that's all I have unless you have specific questions for me.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Next are our commission reports, and we will begin with public safety.
Good evening. In your packet, you'll see a memo from me regarding the study of police, fire, and city administration facilities. Basically, at the May 29th meeting, the special council meeting, Chief Lowe Miller and myself were directed to get in touch with some architects that were qualified in public safety municipal buildings. We met with Five Bugles, very impressive group. We gave them the history, gave them the tour of the facilities, and we were kind of taken by them. They were very professional. They brought up a retired police chief and a retired fire chief, and that's part of their staff who will do this study if you guys accept the proposal. So basically, the proposal is for $23,000, give or take. And that's going a little bit high. It's not budgeted, but we didn't buy a squad this year. We budgeted for it. We bought a squad last year. It was to replenish the reserves. Talking with Mike, he said we could possibly use that money to pay for the study. You'll see the statement of qualifications there in your packet regarding Five Bugles. But I really feel that we should get this study going so we can start getting some plans. And the study that we did in 2009, I think WSN did it, was about $17,000.
Yeah,
give or-
that included a little bit different look than what
That's
this is. This is a highly specialized look at just police and just fire from a company that's all they do.
And with this one, there will be included in the study would be just a conceptual drawing.
design, yep. Yep, and that would include City Hall, council chambers, and, basically it'd be a 100-year plan, 100-year building. Even looking at the 2009 study, that was outdated by now, just because philosophies have changed regarding public safety and that type of thing, so.
So what direction are you giving them? A new building? A whole new thing?
They will come in and they will study the existing building, and, or they will look at a different building. Chip and I feel that this piece of property is a place that I think would be the best place, and to keep all of us together, police, fire, city administration, and ambulance. So, I mean, if this building would have to be torn down and rebuilt, that's something we would look at. I mean, back in '89, when the fire department was built, we built it out of wood. Kind of strange. So, and when this was built, the addition, I mean, in reality, in 5 years, we were overgrown. So we've been in it for 22 years now, and it's time to take a look. See what it's gonna cost, see what they,
But we're gonna give them $23,000 to do a study, and I guess I am just curious what direction the study we're telling them to go in.
Will the study help us with that direction?
study would help
Yes.
us with that direction
right,
as they study this building to see, I'm assuming that they'll probably take a look at the engineering in this building and hopefully not see the black mold. So they'll take a look at this, see if this can be converted into something, add on, whatever might be. But, I mean, in reality, we're still in a stick-built building for your public safety.
Well, just so
I
we're
think-
we're aware of where it's going.
Right. I think, I mean, this is a huge undertaking for us. It's something that is going to take considerable planning and managing. One of the things that I learned at the workshop was Ted Strand has a very, very good description of how this building came to be and how it was built and what he did and what they did literally, putting in the ceiling in this room. And so we recognize that the public has to be part of this project, and consequently, we will be as transparent as, with any information that we get, and open it up, because this will be a community event. Ted, did you have a comment that you wanted to say?
Just that this facility's getting tired. I mean, we're sitting with the original air conditioners in here. We have run across another area that we have some mold that we have to address. We have doors and windows that are frames that are starting to rot. We have siding it was particle board, basically, that was that pressed particle board that was put on here. We have several things that we need to take care of. And before we put more money into this, let's look at a legitimate study and try to figure out which way to go. So we're looking out to that, like the chief says, the next 50, 100 years. Because this, whatever we do is going to have to stand that long. So that's all I had to
Thank
comment
you.
on.
Chief Lohmiller, did you have any comments? You were part of the workshop?
We just have to remember that, we're trying to make the city grow. We want to bring in more industry and commercialize a little bit more, and we're growing, and growing. Well, emergency services has to grow along with it, along with the administration. I have no more room in my fire hall. We have a vehicle that stays outside now. Obviously, we've talked about it in our meeting that we're growing, but the facility is too small to grow. We have to look at how we can make things better. In the fire service side, with the new cancer awareness push and everything else, we need locker rooms, we need places for my members to shower. We have females and males. So there's a lot of things to look at here. We haven't changed anything in 22 years. And we just have to look and see what's best for us.
Thank you. So what you're asking for tonight is a motion from the council
Yep,
to space needs study, to have, spend the money on a space needs study by Five Bugles.
Correct.
Okay.
I'll make that motion.
Gary Hecox first. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Brad Nelson second. All those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Where was that money coming from? Not buying a
Half a
police
squad
car?
car.
Yeah, half a squad car. I was going to ask him, do you have money next year for the squad car? When you're going to need it? I hope so. Okay.
One with two wheels.
Public Works.
Good evening, Ms. Mayor and council. The first one we have here is, we have a approval of a paving of a right-of-way on Manhattan Point. In the process of doing the project up on Manhattan, we ended up having to exaggerate the crown of the road. It was so that it was tipped both ways. We got that 5-incher, and we couldn't handle the water that was coming down the hill, so it washed out some people's property, Thompson's and some other ones in this area we're talking about. We have a public access that both of the two neighbors utilize for their driveways, which was approved later on. What we ended up doing is we actually ended up raising the shoulder of the road and tipping the road to the gutter that's along the bike path. When we did that, we made the circumstances in their driveways very difficult for them to utilize their driveways at times. And we need to take and try to handle the runoff that's still coming off along down the edge of the road. So they have made a request to us for permission to pave the city right-of-way. The commission heard their request, and all the commissioners were in favor of allowing them. You still have the ultimate authority of that. I can show you some pictures if you'd like to see the pictures of what some of the things that were, we actually put some mud and water during this event in their garage. But I have some pictures here if you'd like to see those.
So they're not asking the council to pay for the paving, they're just asking for the ability to pave it, just so you know that. right?
Approval
Is that
of,
true?
approval of paving on city right-of-ways, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I apologize for the grain in this, but you can see how it washed and cut coming down into their driveways. And how we, after we got the raised, how much more elevation there is between what the old grade was, which is down here, and what it is today. You can see where the water was running down the hill prior to their property, and the mud that's in there next to his Harley there, it flowed through this door and into their garage. You can see some more of the washing here coming down the hill and here also. So I don't think their request is out of line.
So when you tip the road, Ted, it just can't handle a 5-inch rain. You're hoping it'll handle an inch rain.
Well,
and
we've
put
had
it
some
away.
small ones and it's handled it so far. Right now the turf is just getting established. I don't know if you've been up there, but the grass is really starting to come.
Yeah.
All of that helps us. I think if we get this done and they do their driveway and we get a couple of the little shaping issues taken care of with the next driveway, I think we'll be in good standings up there, so. I don't know if Dave's got anything to add to that, or?
That's everything that we've talked about.
I would make it a motion to approve it.
Dave Nevin first. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Gary Hecock, second. All those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you. I think the folks are very happy with it. The next one is we have a request for proposal for professional services. Dave, do you want to
Dave,
talk
yeah,
about
Dave, do you want to
Dave
come up
and-
here and?
Yeah.
Yep.
Good evening, council.
Good evening.
This is a proposal to complete a stormwater watershed modeling of the area of Highway 66 and Manhattan Point Boulevard, and the watershed within that area that we've already taken some steps on to handle the runoff that's coming from both the city's right-of-way and the county's right-of-way. So this was generated out of a water quality committee meeting. It's needed to move on to the step of applying for funding for the project, which, preliminary estimates around $450,000 for construction. So there's a couple of opportunities out there for funding and paying for the grant or for this watershed modeling, and this will help immensely in that effort. So been through Water Quality Committee and been through Public Works. Both committees are recommending approval by the City Council.
And you have the figure in here of 9,000, is that correct, Dave?
9,000. Yep.
10,000, okay.
And that is to be shared with the county?
That, no.
Hopefully.
Yeah, so what Melissa Barrett from the Crow Wing Soil and Water will be doing is to submit a grant for the bulk of what will be put in at that corner of 66 and Manhattan Point Road to finish out that pond. And this is more detail for them to submit that grant. But what I wanted to add was that Melissa is also looking out at other grants to help pay for this particular piece of the project. And then John Forney, who is the chairperson of our water quality group, has spoken with Pine River Watershed, led by Ron Meyer, and he wrote a grant that will be submitted to support this project. So we have some very strong supporters on our water quality group and in the Pine River Watershed who understand this. So it's very likely that this particular proposal can be cut in half.
Is this similar to the one they did up on Trout Lake last year?
Yeah.
Who paid for that one? Was that had to be the state or somebody?
I don't know.
Yeah, that was a Crow Wing County Soil and Water effort, along with WAPOA and Manhattan Beach, I believe. Ted, you may know more about that than I do. Okay.
And if you remember, we've already, when we're upgrading Manhattan Point Boulevard, we had to put
I
a
know.
culvert under
Yeah.
the road for this project, so.
And so we put this final project on hold just so we could collect our funds, work with the Crow Wing County Soil and Water and the county engineer, and I think the goal is in 2 years to have that pond retention area done.
Can I get, there was some discussion, Ted, on the 50/50 with the county. Can we get something in writing from them?
I'm sure if we made a request and we could get it.
So
I mean,
we-
you look at it this way, the worst case is we would be 50/50 with the $10,000. And hopefully with the grants that are all written, where it's going to be significantly less than that, and we still be 50/50 and whatever we've done. That's how we've talked about all the other past projects associated with this, with them. So I don't think we'd have any problem with the,
And in
County
fact,
engineer.
yeah, and in fact, Rob Hall has given us some estimates on, formulas that they're working on that he has shared with us, so it
well,
shows
the-
50/50.
part of it is there's their part that's the county road, and then the part of it is ours, and then the cost of the pond then shared according to those portions out. So that's all part of what his study is going to do,
Okay,
so.
okay.
So can I have a motion on the floor to approve the request for professional services for the stormwater modeling project?
I'll make that motion.
Dave Schrupp first. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Gary Heacock second. All those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, the next few, I think Mr. Reardon Mike is going to come forward and talk about a little bit, I think.
C is
Oh, I'm sorry, the pedestrian. I apologize, this is mine. No. I've got lost track of where I was on my agenda. I've had the lengthiest agenda here tonight, and I apologize. One of the commissioners at the Public Works have felt strong feelings that we need to be looking at the crosswalks at Pioneer and 66 and right by the Army Corps. And his suggestion is the flashing lights that are installed, so as the pedestrians come up to the corner, they can push the button, the lights start flashing for a given length of time, and it allows them to cross. And he thought that the council should be looking at, in their next year's budget, some money to do this. I haven't had a chance really to sit down and look at what these things cost yet. I know Eric had some earlier that he'd looked at, but I don't even remember what the costs were associated with it. It's been quite a while ago, so. But anyway, that's what their request is. They felt strongly, all were in favor of it from the commission side. They wanted you guys to try to put some money aside in the 2019 budget, so.
And we would have to work with Tim Bray and his group on this.
Yep. And
Which we
I don't know, that this is early in the game. I don't know if there's participation from them, a county again, if there'd be cost sharing on that. That's all questions we got to get into.
The new school was mentioned here because of the intersection and the kids crossing. That was the concern.
So what
for
are
the
you
children.
asking, Ted? I mean, are you going to come back with some cost estimates
We're
or
gonna
something?
try
for
to
the
get some
budget?
cost estimates, so we got something to talk smart at the budget meetings with you about.
Okay.
Okay.
Get some direction with the county if they will participate. I just don't want to go forward and put a bunch of time in this if you guys are not in favor of doing anything like this, so.
Okay.
So I'm looking for council direction, I guess.
Yep. Well,
Well, I think it's a good
Comment?
idea.
I
Those
do too.
crosswalks are dangerous.
we at least have to talk with the county and to see what, and our public safety to see what we come up with,
Well, I think you need to go ahead with it.
Yep.
So is that a motion? You want a motion for
Just a
that?
direction?
Just give me direction for me to work on it, and I'll bring something forward to the next
Work on it
meeting. and-
then.
Second that.
Thank you.
Do you want to do D? Who's going to do D?
Would you please?
Mayor, Council. I've prepared a summary of the meeting that was held on June 20th, if you recall, last month. In my update, wastewater treatment plant update, I mentioned there were some concerns and seeking of more information on electrical modifications at the Public Works building, a transfer switch and that sort of thing. So on June 20th, John Groutman, Phil Martin, and myself from Bolton and Mink met with Ted Strand, Dave Nevin, and Dave Schrupp, along with Matt Garding from Holden Electric, and right in the electrical room, and looked at the actual situation and the emergency lighting, how that was set up, and the transfer switch, and what was planned and what couldn't be done, and then what could be done. I think there was in my summary here, I think went through and was a pretty good understanding of everyone, the situation, and in the end, it seemed like, well, the emergency lighting that had to be revised. It couldn't, there's no way it could be left as it was. And the transfer switch, which was optional, doesn't have to be done, but if it is done, it was part of the project, and if it is done, then what the additional costs would be. And I think the two Daves there had their opportunities to ask all the questions and understand that, and I think there's pretty good understanding of both those situations. And the general feeling was that those changes should be considered and basically approved by the council. It seemed that the emergency lighting has to be revised. There's no question on that. It's not code compliant. And the transfer switch would allow for powering of the facility, and certainly looking at emergency operations in the future. It was felt that that's needed for the residents here in the city, so that Public Works, both the city and the county, can operate out of that facility. The cost was estimated for the emergency lighting at about $4,300, and when we split everything up from the original change order, and that's in my report later on here, but that amount was $4,657, and we've got a change built into that report then for that work would be done on a time and materials basis and not to exceed that cost. And then for the transfer switch, I had estimated roughly $22,000, and that cost, now what's specific is $21,602, and that again would be time and materials with the not to exceed.
And those are not to
cost.
exceed, yeah.
Yeah, right.
You just said it.
So that's, I guess, an update on that whole situation, and I would answer any questions, and maybe Councilmember Nevin and Schrupp can chime in on that too. And
Well, I think where it came from was a change order that got Ted kind of fired up about it, and so we dug into it a little bit, and after digging into it, it makes sense. Is that not correct? Yeah.
Right. And the crux of the problem is, if you look at the last page, when was the plant put in? 13 years ago? And it should not have been approved at that time?
Yeah, the lighting that's in the current shop, and the way the building is fed, don't meet code. That's what it comes down to.
But they were approved at the time they were installed.
And then there were
Not meeting code.
subsequent additions to that panel, and they got approved. So that's why we kind of concluded, whatever it's worth, is let the state of Minnesota know what a poor job they did. And the other
And they're the ones that caught the mistake.
yeah, right, a new inspector. And the other aspect is we're going to try to get the county to pay for it.
So we asked
their percentage.
Bolton Mink to do it, try to save money on a cost not to exceed. So instead of the 22,000, it's 21,602, not to exceed time material.
Okay.
Correct the problem. So I think we did as good
And
as we could.
so,
It's a change order to the project, is what
Yeah.
I'm announcing.
okay,
Yeah.
so you want a motion from the council to go ahead with that, the services provided by Bolton and Mink?
So I'd make that motion.
Okay, Dave Nevin first, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Dave Schrupp second. All those in favor of motion on the floor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. The never-ending saga of our storm sewer plant, huh?
Hope your chair's comfortable.
Next item. We've got a proposal in front of you for professional services for a citywide wastewater management study. And really what that is that was discussed on the 20th with Ted Strand, Dave Nevin, Dave Schrupp, and Mike Liney immediately after the change order meeting about the storm sewer extension project up towards Moonlight Bay, basically up to 66 and 16.
City sewer, not
Sanitary.
storm. Yeah, sanitary.
Sanitary
Yeah,
sewer.
you said storm.
Yeah, no, sanitary. So as we talked about that extension and in a proposal for that, but there was also discussion around, just expansion of the system in general and what that would look like. And we went around and around and around, and I was advocating, and the group agreed that you really needed to take a citywide look at wastewater, say generation and collection and treatment within your entire city. And you do that based on land use purposes. So you've got a lot of areas, large acreage, rural, and for all intents and purposes, that's not going to change maybe indefinitely. So there's some areas that make sense to have sewer systems. There may be some areas that have isolated community systems. There's probably some areas that should be sewered. And I guess as a result of that whole discussion, we were asked to bring forward a proposal to look at that, to show you those different options, but a long-term plan that the city could understand as you get development requests, people want to get hooked up or whatever, you want to do road projects, but you know where you're going over a period of time with your sewer, and also for us to put in some priorities there on what we think you might be looking at first and what you might be looking at last, and also to generate some costs so you have an understanding of eventually what you'd be looking at and what the costs might be. So that's really what this proposal would do, is to give you that look at the future so you can then make some other intelligent decisions as you go along.
Ted, do you have any additional comments on this? Okay, yep, great.
We would, assuming if you could approve this tonight, we would have a final report to you by October 8th.
One comment I would make on it is, earlier on, I was looking at boring in and hooking up to the city for a project that I was doing. And Tim Bray from the county, I mean, they really want this city to put a plan together and what they're doing in the future before they'll do anything, so.
Any other comments or questions for Mike? If not, can I have a motion on the floor to accept the proposal for professional services from Bolton and Menk to be delivered October 8th?
I'll make that motion.
Brad Nelson first, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Dave Schrupp second?
Can I have a question?
Yep.
Where are we going to pay for this? You have some, Ted?
The other half
No
of the car.
truck for you?
What?
No truck for you? Police department gave up a car. No vehicle. Wrong statement? All right. Do you have money for this? 16,000, 15,650.
We'll find some.
Okay.
Eric doesn't get.
Eric's still
other
got half a
of his
squad car.
Oh, there's the other
He
half.
just lost his half a squad.
Yes, you can come up state your name and address, and we'll let you make a comment.
My name is Paul McCullough. I live on Margaret Lane, which was in Phase 1 of the sewer system for the city. When that came about, I was sold on it because there was going to be a Phase 2 and a Phase 3. I've been told there's never going to be a Phase 2. Just been told that, don't know it. Which really upset me, because I have a business, I'm hooked up to the sewer at my residence, but I have a business, Moonlight Square, that I'd like to hook up, and there's no Phase 2 to hook it up. Wasn't there a study done back then? And are we just doing another study now?
Okay. Yep, Ted, do you want to comment on that?
Thank you. On the initial startup of the plant, the initial area, all the meetings, we ended up looking at a service area. The money we had at the time and what's the service area. We had to decide that to get it approved by the state. And to Mr. McCullough's comment, we are actually, the next item on the agenda is actually looking at, would be Phase 2, that's going to come to you here in a few minutes, for your approval to hopefully get sewer up to Moonlight Square.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments or questions before we vote on the motion on the floor? If not, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Okay, the next item is a proposal for professional services to prepare a preliminary engineering report for the sewer extension up to that CASA 66 and 16, that Moonlight Bay Square area. There's a little bit of question, I think, how this would be funded. So that this report would give you options about what could be done, a recommendation, and a preliminary engineering report would basically be the preliminary design work that you need to move a project forward should you decide to do one. So part of this report also attempts to identify the financing, and this prepares you to do assessments should you so desire to do that. As part of the chapter MSA 429 process, you need to have a preliminary engineering report. We were here earlier in February, gave you a proposal for a concept study, which was very similar to this, but wouldn't have met the 429 requirements. This one here will meet those should you want to go ahead and establish assessments.
And this is
for
the
this.
report for the Moonlight Bay
Yes. this-
sanitary sewer extension?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And so if this was approved this evening, then this would actually come back to you as a final August 17th. I think the idea behind both the previous study and this one here is so you can then build them into your budget processes as you start to look forward. I think the idea was, what we'd heard was a 2019 construction project for this one here, and then that study which we were looking at, this would be one of the pieces identified in that as a future project, but this would be an immediate future project. And then you'd
Yeah.
have Phase 2, but a Phase 3 and a Phase 4 at some, I could try to lay that out so you could see that, but this would be the report which would allow you to move ahead with this project next year if you wanted to do that.
Would this include stubs like on the Community Center Road, Dagapine Road? I mean, would that be part of the study and the number of hookups between here and 16?
This would include everything up to 16 and 66, or even the Moonlight Square, but on the end, anything which would hook into this extension. It wouldn't go down towards the community center.
No, but between here and there, it would give us the
Between here
number
and there,
of people and.
Because we would have to, assuming you wanted, or think you might be interested in assessments, we'd have to identify that
Yeah,
and
but that's part of this
assessed
study.
amount and that sort of thing. And one thing you should be aware of, you have an assessment policy that works for roads and bridges, but you don't have any provisions in there for utility assessments, whether you had some cities do water, some do sewer, some do storm sewer. Somewhere along the line here going forward, if you're actually going to want to do assessments, then you'd have to amend your assessment policy to include a piece for utilities, in particular here sanitary sewer. And you may want to look more broadly than that when you do that at once, and just, you do it once and you're done.
So we
with it.
need to look into that, whatever that is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Oh, Ted?
Well, I just want to make a comment. One of the commissioners were really concerned that we weren't going to be letting the public know, and people that are going to be affected by this. And my comment back was, before I can have any meetings or talk to anybody, I need to know the costs of this, and that's what this study will do. Will give us hard numbers of what this is going to cost, so we can even look at the next step.
Preliminary numbers, though.
Preliminary
numbers.
The next step.
Yep, sounds good. Thank you. Any other comments or questions for Mike before we have a motion from the council? If not, can we have a motion from the council for the professional services by Bolton and Mink for the extension of Moonlight Bay sanitary sewer extension
For $7,300.
for $7,300?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Dave Nevin first, Dave Shrub second. All those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
I would like to ask Mike, the city administrator, and Brad here, normally there's a resolution ordering this report, and I had attached a blank resolution which could be used for that purpose. And the question is, would we need to have that approved, or is this significant enough action?
Is that part of the 429?
You don't have to, if your question is, you need to have the draft resolution like in the packet before we vote, no is the answer to that. I mean, if you're clarifying and the council can just nod heads that, you already mentioned the whole 429 process, that this may be used as step one in the 7 steps to assess, I think that's enough.
Okay.
Yeah. We could, by the way, we'll talk about it more, but you can also go under 444 and not do assessments and just do hookup charges. If you're going to do assessments, that suggests to me discussion of mandatory hookups so that everyone pays their share versus more of a voluntary hookup fee. And if you do hookup fees, 444, you don't need to follow 429 whatsoever. So 2 different possibilities there.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I just may have a couple moments with you, just a couple things that have come up. The no parking signs that we installed on West Shore Drive around the public access, some of them have been removed. Somebody just took it upon themselves to take them down, and they're gone. 5 to 7 of them so far. I don't know where. I've looked off in the brush. I've looked off over the bridges. I am not quite sure where they went to. We have, in fact, this weekend, we lost some street signs. We lost a stop sign, a stop ahead sign. I don't know where the glory in it is, but we have had an issue with that. I just wanted the council to be aware that we had installed them and they're gone. So we're looking at replacing them or what we should do there, but we'll keep working forward on that one. And then the other thing is that lightning storm that we had here 2 Saturdays ago. We lost the fueling system at the treatment plant. We lost the computers at the treatment plant. Some lighting. It actually blew the bulbs right out of the porcelain fixtures. Phone system, heating system, air conditioning system, thermostats off the wall.
Sounds like you got hit.
We got a pretty good shot. We're probably $25,000 in insurance claims. So I thought I'd better let you know. Mike's aware of it, and we have a claim started with our insurance agent. It was kind of an eye-opener. Even the surge protectors that they tell you is good for all that, it just jumps across them. The ground fault breakers, it just jumps across them. There isn't no protection when you get that direct shot. So it was a bit of an eye-opener. I've never taken one that direct on a facility I've operated before, so I'm just letting you know on that one. And again, the other thing I just wanted to talk on was assessments. It's not just assessments for, we're talking sewer, it's assessments for the roads also. If we're going to continue to make improvements in our community, I think we really strongly need to look at an assessment policy, and I just encourage you guys to be thinking about it. If you can find anything on the league site to read on it, so we all are understanding and talking about it, I can get you information if you want more information. But I just want you guys to be thinking about it seriously in the future. With that, thank you.
Thanks,
Well,
Ted.
Ted, in other words, what we really need is to have a workshop on assessments.
Yeah, that's what it's going to come down to.
Yeah, I think that's a good comment, Gary, because it's not only assessments, it's like, you know, we may have some heavy expenses coming up over the next 5, 10, 15 years, and how do we manage all that and
Yes,
be respectful of our community?
yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep. One more from Mr. Reardon.
I'll be very brief, Mayor. That wastewater treatment plant project update, most of the work this past month has been trying to finish up some underground conduit, but wiring. The main thrust now is to get wire and the controls on all the different motors and things which actually operate the plant. So some of those controls have come in, some are still coming in. That was that part of that whole design, along with when I say SCADA, which is an acronym for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition, but that's computers that hook everything together, that monitor, run everything, and then keep track of it for all the reporting and records. And it's all in the process, but it's a little difficult because the plant is running. Instead of just building a new one, you just put it together and you're done with it. Here you have to run it, and you have to take stuff out of service and in service. And so it just takes some time to do that sort of thing. And so as the materials are coming in, they're hooking in as much as they can, but it almost gets to the very end, and you almost have to flip the whole thing on all at once or a very short period of time. There's been some talk now the past 1 or 2 weeks of some concern over that with just from a timing perspective. We got a completion date of August 31st, and the last of everything's supposed to come in. Right now it's scheduled for August 24th. And when you take the plant in and out of service, and you can only do that at select times of the day and for short periods of time, there's a real concern whether they can get that all done in 1 week, assuming you don't have any electrical storm issues or whatever. So there may be a request for an extension of time just so they can complete that part of it. Don't know that will happen or not. They're talking about that right now. So there may be that request coming within the next month. I just want to have you be aware of that. If it is, it wouldn't be for a long period of time. It's just that it looks like maybe they'll make it by the end of August, and maybe they won't. It's pretty nip and tuck, I think. Otherwise, I think the big part was we had that meeting, which we've talked about now, and the changes. There were a couple other changes there that that we needed to have action on. One was to authorize a mixer for the EQ basin, and that's in this report. And whether you make a motion or just say, yeah, that's fine, go ahead. I mean, it will work either way for us, I guess, as long as you're aware of it and you're okay with it. And I think the last time I was here, of that $75,000 we had set aside for extra work, we were at about 60,600. I think the number right now is about 59. 8 or something like that.
With
So
all
it's-
that in there.
So, yep, with
With all that in
everything
there.
in, everything that you've approved and this EQ basin mixer, so it's actually a little bit better number than it was a month ago. So, with that, I'd answer any questions you have about update or costs or.
Any questions or comments for Mike?
Nope.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're down to the public forum. No action will be taken on any of the issues raised. If appropriate, the issues will be placed on the agenda of a future council meeting. Speaker must state their name and address. Each speaker is given a 3-minute time limit. Is there anybody from the audience who has a comment under public forum? Mr. Oster?
Doug Oster, 13600 County Road 16. I don't know if, maybe, I got here late, so maybe we already talked about this, or somebody brought it up, but County Road 16 has had a pretty good speed limit of 55 to 60 for a number of years. And we talked about it this spring, I know. I don't know if anybody heard about the stunt driving that was done a couple weeks ago. Apparently somebody, I mean, this was the afternoon when people are out walking and biking and everything. And somebody left Moonlight Square, went over into the lake ditch, came out of the lake ditch sideways, came across the road, now that's crossing oncoming traffic, smashed my mailbox in the ditch, made it all the way past the wharf, you know, I'm sure at 45 miles an hour, jumped a road approach and landed up in the trees, knocked trees down up pretty high, but again, I'm here hounding for 45 on 16, so.
Well, I don't know that would change that incident at all.
That may not have been a problem. Just saying we dodged a bullet. I just don't want to be in the news. I know we talked about 55 through town and 70 in the outskirts, but I don't know if that's a good idea, Mike.
Thank you.
but-
Okay.
Okay?
Yep, thank
Just here to
you.
bug you again.
Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
comment. Any other public comments? Is there any old business? Any new business? City Attorney report.
No report other than a request to go, motion to go into closed session to review status on the condemnation litigation.
Okay, can we have a motion on the floor?
I'll make that motion.
Dave Schrupp first. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Brad Nelson second. All those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.